Welcome to the extended version of this lesson on the rock bottom. We just covered what the rock bottom is, how it's related to the epiphany, and how we can introduce the epiphany with a speech from another character. Now, let's look at how the rock bottom relates to real-life journeys, a super underused style of rock bottom, and check out this phase in action with an in-depth example of 2017's Get Out. Let's start off with why rock bottom is so important. When we talk about stories that resonate with us, it's often ones we can relate to. Sometimes that's because we've gone through similar hardships or learned similar lessons. So it's fair to say that if we can mirror life through the metaphors of storytelling, we can create stories that touch our audiences on a deeper level. One idea that people talk about a lot outside of story structure is rock bottom. I mean, no one is running around chatting about the moment of danger, but you've probably heard the phrase hitting rock bottom or just hitting bottom before. And one of the most prominent areas you'll see this word used is in addictions, specifically in recovery. If you've listened to any stories about recovered alcoholics or addicts, a lot of the time they'll mention hitting bottom. Things got so low and so desperate that they realized they needed to seek help. And when they realized they needed to cut out the substance from their life to function, they began to see improvements until they reached where they are today. That's obviously a vast oversimplification that glosses over the severity and complexities of addiction, but at the core of these stories, we find the same ideas we've been circling in this course. When the protag hits rock bottom, they realize things can't go on this way. When they get help or advice from another character, they undergo their epiphany and realize they must cut out their flaw to function. And as they embrace their need, things improve until they find success in the story climax. Both real life and storytelling share the idea that sometimes things need to get really bad before they get better. Because often we don't realize that we are the ones that need to change until we've lost everything else. And as a fun aside, this is mentioned in Bridesmaids when Annie's mother, who frequents Alcoholics Anonymous meetings, tells Annie she might have hit her bottom. And in a line that speaks to the heart of what we're getting at, she says, "I'm telling you, hitting bottom is a good thing, because there's nowhere to go but up." The rock bottom alongside the inner gateway is also where the B story comes to the forefront. There's usually almost no action here, meaning plot-wise we are at a standstill. Instead, this is the phase where the theme, the B story, the flaw, the epiphany, and the need get to shine. It's where the moral or lesson is outlined and learned. So if you feel like your story is lacking in the internal department, consider boosting your rock bottom and inner gateway. Finally, let's cover a super underused rock bottom technique that can help in a specific type of story. We'll cover this concept more in a lesson on the story climax, but essentially, some stories have what we call a personal victory. This means that the protag doesn't achieve their goal per se, but does a good enough job that they are satisfied with the result. Rocky is a good example. Rocky doesn't beat Apollo Creed, but he manages to last 15 rounds, proving to himself and the world that he isn't just some bum. You can make this type of ending work in many ways, but one is through the rock bottom. It has to do with setting the bar. Have your protags say what they are looking for in the story climax. That way, when they achieve it, we know they are successful. You can see this happen in Rocky. We assume Rocky's goal is to beat Apollo Creed, but during the rock bottom, Rocky actually says he knows he won't beat Creed, but lasting 15 rounds will prove he isn't just some bum. This clarifies what success looks like to the protag, so that when they achieve it, the audience feels just as satisfied as they do. Now, let's see the rock bottom in action with our in-depth example.
Get Out is a 2017 horror thriller that follows Chris, a photographer, as his first visit to his girlfriend's parents' house becomes his greatest nightmare. We've chosen this story to showcase the rock bottom because it exemplifies how to not only make this phase function, but to add some metaphorical depth as well. Get Out begins as Chris and Rose head to her parents' house. There, things seem strange, especially surrounding race, and this climaxes at the midpoint when Chris takes a photo of Andre. Suddenly, Andre's nose begins bleeding and he screams to Chris to get out. However, Chris can't, and he's overwhelmed by Rose's family at the moment of peril. We then cut to Chris in his rock bottom. He's strapped to a chair with a TV in front of him and soon learns that Rose's family has been hypnotizing black people and transferring white people into their bodies. And guess who's next? Chris then talks to the photographer he met earlier and discovers he wants Chris's body for his eyes. In the final moment, which we label here as the inner gateway, Chris looks at the cotton coming out of his chair and has his epiphany. You can see this works well as the rock bottom because Chris is clearly at his lowest point, and definitely lower than where he started. As mentioned, the protag is usually trapped, and here, Chris is strapped to a chair and stuck in Rose's basement. Things seem hopeless, and it seems Chris's goal of escaping Rose's family will be impossible. As for tone, this is exactly what you're looking for in the rock bottom. But there's also some great metaphor happening here. Rock bottom is a low point, and that can be emphasized by showing the protag literally at their low point. Here, that's in a basement. Great rock bottoms are often underground, in caves, or lairs, pushing this metaphor of hitting the lowest point. Even though Chris doesn't have another character to deliver him a speech here, he still glimpses his epiphany. In Get Out, it's the realization that the cotton from the chair can be used to plug his ears and prevent the sound of the teacup from making him fall asleep. You can see this implies the inner gateway of Chris plugging his ears, but since this isn't shown, we label this moment as the inner gateway, similar to the one in Predator. This also showcases his switch from inaction, or non-confrontation, to action, or confrontation. And it also works as a metaphor since Chris is picking cotton to save himself. Get Out does an incredible job of highlighting the protag at their lowest point, making things feel hopeless, and adding depth to this phase by using metaphor.
You should now have a good grasp on the rock bottom, including how to use it to deliver your protag to their epiphany. And in the next lesson, we're going to talk all about that epiphany as we cover the inner gateway.